I think we have been really conditioned in like the all or nothing thinking that if we're not role modeling, give everything you have and be a hard worker and a good team player, and all of those are like capitalized and have a TM at the end, you know what I mean? Then we're going to have a bunch of lazy layabouts and it's going to be chaos. And that is, the marketing of hustle culture. It is a lie.
Welcome to Fem MD, real talk for women who are balancing careers, ambition, and the chaos that comes with it all. Today's guest is Dr. Joan Chan. She's a family physician in Canada. I met her through the Hippocratic Collective. We're both co-founders. She hosts her own podcast called The Other Human in the Room. She's a physician, coach, mom, and has such a chill vibe about her. I'm so excited today to talk to her about under-maximizing ourselves, or under scheduling ourselves so that we can have career enjoyment and career longevity. Hey, Joan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. Good to see you. How's your morning been?
It's been so good. Just a lovely Saturday morning. Lots of chores and children.
Yeah, typical mom Saturday.
Yeah.
I think my kids are still at home in their pajamas right now. So, and your show's called The Other Human in the Room. Will you tell us a little bit about who is the other human in the room?
It's me. It's you. It's all of us. Yeah, I came from this idea of like really reflecting on, and it wasn't that anyone taught it to me directly, but sort of through that hidden curriculum, the socialization, and even socialization I got pre-medicine of like, don't remember that you are a human. Like pretend that you are almost a non-entity, just like a brain floating around, a robot that's there to serve everyone and do whatever they need, but also be evidence-based, but also stay on time. Hilarious. And feeling like an imposter because you can't do those things because those things are literally impossible. And so through that process, I recognize like, I think the thing that we really need to start with, it seems very basic, but it is also quite profound of being like, hey, you know that when you're in that room or like at the bedside with a patient, like we do recognize that they are humans, hopefully, as much as we can. And sometimes then we hyper focus on that, but recognizing there's always like two people in that room and one of them is you. And you get to honor that as well. In fact, like through honoring that you are a human too, that is how you can best support the humanity of your patient. When we think we've got to be all these automaton things, that's when we actually cause the most harm to our patients. Like you can't be patient-centered if you think you have to run all these scripts, like being on time, be evidence-based, give them what they want, but also be strict. But, so it's like when you're just a human with them, it's actually the most therapeutic and beneficial for both people in the room. So every week we do different topics about that or have different humans on to be like, hey, you're a human, right? Tell me how you're a human. And it's fun.
Coming from a surgical background, you've already kind of alluded to the fact that like medical training, surgical training can be kind of different. And this like visual of a brain floating around, I love that. Surgical training really like beats the human out of us, like very much our basic needs, like even going to the restroom or eating lunch, like those things are not really permitted. You are a huge advocate of what you call operating under your maximum capacity. I want to really dive into that. Tell us how you coach physicians to utilize that on a day-to-day basis.
It's so interesting, like just the concept that we have a finite capacity. It's a useful thing to know. And, because sometimes it's like, push the limits. And of course, like that capacity can be very large. Folks who go into medicine are incredibly skilled and driven and can do a lot. And we are mortal. So like there's time bounds and physical boundaries to what we are capable of. It is useful to know that, period. And what we often see that happens is when people forget that, not because they're silly, but because they've been deeply conditioned to forget that, harm comes to them. And, whether you call it burnout, like stress-related illness, all these different things, right? So I first heard about thinking about your capacity actually from like embodiment practitioners, like people who are not physicians. And it was interesting to me like, oh, you can honor your capacity. And through honoring your capacity, you can then provide actually higher quality care that's more paced and feels better to you and perhaps even to your patient. And so I started sort of talking about that myself and noticed that a lot of physicians were drawn to that in a way that maybe it's easier to shunt off something that feels less like fixed. If you're just like, take care of yourself, put wellness in your routine, you're like, I don't have time for that. Versus when you're like, what if globally, like the best self-care you can do is literally doing less of everything and having space in order to recover, in order to have flex time for when unexpected things come up, because that happens all the time. Like literally it's a strategy you can use to have a more spacious life, a more creative and responsive life. So just speaking to the concept. So then, in terms of how I coach physicians on it, certainly, there's free webinars, the podcast, and then I have this container where I hold space for physicians for 6 months, like on a weekly basis. And we go into like the details of the actual strategies that are most effective to start to actually do that. Like, how do you actually start setting boundaries and saying no? How do you actually start doing things with greater mediocrity, which is an important component that is very triggering to many physicians, but super important, and how do you know what is worth not doing with mediocrity? Like, how do you know what you want to protect and actually like make sure is a priority in your day? And what do you want to delegate? Those are the 4 components. And so we spend 6 months together. We have a retreat at the end, and it's super fun to watch people slowly chip away at all of the inhuman stories that are blocking them from being able to take a lunch break. Like literally, these are the steps. Like, it's not like someone has to reinvent their whole life necessarily, but it's like creating space is taking a lunch break. Creating space is saying no to a committee. And sometimes it's something big, like I'm leaving my job for a different job. I'm totally reinventing my life. But oftentimes it's actually these incremental steps that feel a lot safer to do. But then you end up with a life that has actually the amount of work and other kinds of life that you want in it and space for you. So
how do you determine your capacity? Because I feel like for me personally, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing a lot. I'm busy. Some days I feel stressed out and exhausted, but I could always be doing more. I could always be doing more. Like, when we think about what is our maximum capacity and then chipping down below that, like, how do you define the ceiling so that you can decrease your workload?
Oh, such a good question. And I don't know, like there might be some fancy scientist person that has like a calculated algorithm that you could use. But what I look for and encourage people to reflect on for themselves are, what are their signs that they are over capacity? That's a good start. And, so feeling totally drained by the end of every single day, right? Suddenly hating everyone all the time. That's a good sign. Like emotionally being really irritable.
Do I need a Snickers or do I need less patience in my day?
Right? Exactly. Oh, like an actual important question to ask. Or are you also very hypersensitive to people's criticism and you're like beating yourself up all the time, right? Are you just chronically exhausted all the time, right? So especially sort of on a regular basis, say some of those things are hitting you, then maybe you are over capacity. And then it is like a personal experiment of getting to know your body and your body signals of finding like, okay, do we think we're at it now? I feel like I know I'm at capacity when I start to panic about if things go wrong. So I know I'm getting too full if I'm like, okay, I can do this, but if one thing falls off the wagon, then I'm going to lose my, what. So like, that's a good sign for me. I'm getting close, or I like literally start to feel kind of claustrophobic. Like it's sort of and those are what I'd say just are like my mental and physical signals. And so those are just some cues for me, but I really encourage people to sense those for themselves, right? Like on a practical level, say you're triple booked every 10 minutes. I'm just going to tell you right now, like you don't have a Hermione time turner. Like sometimes you can look at someone's calendar and be like, unless people are doing some of this for you, humans can't do what you say you're trying to do, right? So sometimes it's obvious, but more it's about like the physical, emotional, and like mental signs of over capacity at capacity that then give you a signal like, what happens if we keep going a little further down there?
Yeah. And that's so interesting because again, you think back to like undergrad, medical school, residency, potentially fellowship, those feelings of like exhaustion, overwhelmment, those are like baseline.
Baseline.
And so you almost have to like forget the last decade.
Oh, yes.
Like retrain your mind and your body to listen to those cues so that you can have like a good, enjoyable, long career.
Yes. And the tragedy of that, and my deep wish that we could, incrementally over time at the pace of the people who are doing the educating too, but like, could we move in the direction of not doing that to our learners? Why do we think that's beneficial? Let's really question what values matter to us. Are we here to train our learners to hate their jobs? Or is there actually a much wiser way to train our learners so they stay in their jobs, so there's the highest quality patient care, so that they have space for creativity, for innovation that we desperately need because our system is crumbling to the ground around us? Like, let's think thoughtfully about why we're doing that.
For sure. And it makes me think like, with AI potentially entering the medical space, is that going to afford us as the humans to be more creative and reserve more time for more complex thinking, self-protection?
Yes.
Can we delegate some of these less important tasks or straightforward things to a non-human?
Oh, totally. I am actually already using, I use an AI scribe, and it was such a game changer. Like, I'd already done a lot of work of getting efficient with my charting, and it became something that I proudly did with great mediocrity. I was like, I wrote words down, they were sufficient for me, and now I'm never looking at this chart again. And that was fine. But now I have this AI scribe friend, and I joke about it with patients, like, this is my little robot helper. And it's really neat the things you can do. And it's so funny then. So this exists, right? This is something that potentially every clinician could use. And then no one would be having to document themselves. And it's
for
fascinating.
And for those who aren't physicians, talk about the amount of time that you did spend on notes, say 5 years ago. Talk about how many hours it would take you.
Oh, yeah. Because I'd be seeing patients all day, 9 to 5 or 4:30 or whatever. And in family medicine, I'd be seeing someone every 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the encounter. So a good number of people per day. And I was not a fast, that's medium or average, right? And so you see a person, you do the whole history, physical assessment and everything, plus all of the tasks like prescriptions, requisitions, orders, referrals. All of that takes extra time and energy. But the next person's waiting. So, if I was lucky, I would at least get some of the tasks done. But usually I'd be doing all the seeing. And then over my lunch break, definitely not a lunch break, I'd be eating some food as I was typing furiously. And then at the end of the day, again, typing furiously, getting home late. And then after the kids are in bed, back at the EMR, sometimes late into the night, trying to keep up with everything. And documentation being only one part of that, really, because there's also the inbox management, all the other things. And it was crushing me slowly and surely, especially during the pandemic. It was so overwhelming because there was just so much else that was overwhelming too. And, you're staying up late, then you have to get up the next day and start again. And nobody got into medicine to chart. It's deeply depressing. Notes. No, we're our own transcriptionists, or is that the name? In the courtroom, how there's a person who sits there and types, we don't at a default have that. So we are our own documenters. And maybe that would be fine if there weren't such varied standards or judgments or expectations about documenting. But in Canada, where I practice and live, there's our medical legal body that's there, to protect us and to support us if someone sues us. But they would come into residency and do these workshops, and it would all be if you don't document every single situation and every single side effect and every single thing, you're immediately going to be sued, and then your life is over. Like they didn't say it like that, but that is absolutely the message that everyone
They
walks
wanted you to
away
write
with.
a novel for every single patient you had seen that day. Yeah.
And so then you're like, oh no, like even if you spend all this time, you're trying to remember what the heck which knee was it? Like, for my 9:30 patient, now it's 11 at night. Can I even remember? Like it's brutal. You're trying to remember. And you're like, oh, did I document enough? And like medical legal. So you see then, so like things like AI come along that can take that load off. And we've had so much fear baked into us about this. And you can get almost like a certain kind of perfectionistic pride of like, I write good notes. I have a standard for my notes, so I can't possibly delegate this. And I say this with like deep love and affection. And like, is that the thing you want to protect is the question of all the things that our brilliant minds and bodies could be doing, even simply related to clinical work. Is that the piece that we need to like protect so strongly that we can't let a good enough scribe write some words about what happened for us,
So let's shift. Let's say, I want to see fewer patients, or I want to start saying no to things. How do we start saying no? Because it really is hard. I think, especially as like a young physician, like, an entrepreneur, you always want to say yes to everything, because if you put a little bit of if you put several fires out there and you pour a little gasoline on all of them, one of them is going to take off and your business is going to blow up in such a good way. Like, how do you know which things to say no to? And how do you get okay with that, like, uncomfortableness of saying no?
Such a good question. Oh my gosh. I think like a core thing is like, definitely start with the things that you hate anyway. That's like my favorite things to start saying no to are things that I hated the most resentful for, had the biggest like obligation resentment about. It is delicious to start saying no to those, I will say. And often those can be hard to untangle though, because like you're doing something you hate. You're doing that for a reason, right? Like you aren't just like casually like, what do I want to do with my day? Oh yeah, things that I like greatly feel only guilt and responsibility to do. So it takes time to like untangle the like conditioned stories in your head and also like feel the emotions. Like often it is, I can't say no, I'll feel bad, right? And so one of the things I kind of talk about is people say like, how do you say no and set boundaries without feeling bad? And I say, I'm so sorry, I have some bad news for you. You only start saying no and setting boundaries and you feel willing to feel bad, because you've been socially conditioned to feel guilt, shame, anxiety about feeling bad. That's why you're doing it in the first place. So like learning to feel those emotions and recognizing you feel bad either way. So which one do you want to feel? Resentment and overwhelm and burnout, or honestly temporary, transient guilt and shame that we've been taught to fear, but are also just sensations in our bodies. That's it. You can do them with a therapist, you can do them with a friend, you can do them while doing yoga or something to help process them. But over time, the guilt and shame ones go away. The resentment and burnout ones only get louder because they're signals from your body of like, no, you really, really don't want to do this. So like choosing which bad to feel, that seems like maybe an odd way to answer your question, but honestly, I find that's the most useful way to think about it.
I love it. I think that's so, it's so helpful. Like they both feel bad, and that's okay.
You're feeling like garbage either way. So feel like it in your own direction for once.
My coach that I meet with once a week, we were talking about something and she was like, they're both shit sandwiches. You just have to figure out which one you want to eat.
Oh, so good.
And I was like, I don't want to eat either of them, but I'll pick this one. Okay, so let's talk about your schedule, for example. You talked about you used to see, or maybe you still see, like a patient every 10, 15, 20 minutes. Walk us through like an average like Monday or an average Thursday for you.
Yeah. So a big piece of what my spacious schedule looks like is that I see patients 3 days a week, and then I have 2 days that are completely, I used to call them non-clinical, but that still feels like they're defined by the, what they're not doing, but they don't contain any clinical work. Instead, they are I'm calling them creative days. So I do actually still do different kinds of work in them. That's when I do podcasting. That's when I coach. Like, I have things I'm doing that actually even earn income, but they feel delicious and delightful and are like a different energy. So they take different pieces of my capacity, So that's a piece of the space, is that not every working day is literally a clinical working day. And I found that is a healthy balance for me. And one way I'm able to do that, because, as a family physician, I have like a roster or panel of patients that I have signed up to care for. And so I pay a private nurse practitioner to see patients on my behalf on those days. And that feels good. So actually, I used to not do that. And I would just work really hard on the days I were there and feel guilty. But it's interesting, like, because I'm thinking spaciously and really want to fully delegate my time on those days off, my patients actually have better access as a result. It's one of those things, because I'm willing to hand over the reins for those days and really enjoy not even looking at the inbox and have her do that for me. And it's great. So that's like a creative day. And then on a clinical day, it actually looks pretty similar. Like, I went from 10 to 15-minute appointments as a standard. With my different patients, like, this is a panel like I know very well, right? Like, I've now been in this practice for over 10 years. People come and go, gone, of course, been born and died, right? That's what happens. But there's like the solid cohort, like, especially people who I see frequently, I know them intimately. So a bit of it is knowing, like, some people need more time than others and booking accordingly. I also do a lot of asynchronous care. It feels really good. So I have like a patient portal so people can ask me questions, and I can do a lot of clinical tasks without them having to come in at all, which they really appreciate. I know many physicians are like, it's another inbox, but like for me, I actually find it quite delightful to be like, yay, I didn't have to see you and expend energy in this way. This is like much quicker.
It's a more efficient way of getting things done.
It is. And it's efficient in a way that still feels delightful. Sometimes efficiency makes you feel like a robot, but there's certain kind of efficiency where it's like, this is all that's needed. We didn't have to do the whole thing.
We tied the little bow on top.
We tied a bow, exactly. And then the other key thing, though, is I end my days earlier. So like I used to end my days at a time that I also wanted to leave. And that was like a cute delusion I would then hate every day when I was rushing out the door and hadn't finished all my tasks. But now I recognize I need to stop seeing people like an hour to an hour and a half or 2 hours earlier, so that when I inevitably fall behind, sometimes I'll have space for that. When things come up around the clinic, like, employee stuff comes, I have space for that. Plus inbox stuff, like just being more realistic and not being the time blind that I can somehow see my last patient directly on time and then immediately like transport myself to my car and be like going to pick up my kids. No. So that's another big piece, is like more space there. And actually taking a lunch over lunch. That's the other thing. Even if like my inbox can be popping and full of stuff, but no, like I take that hour in the middle, I sit and eat my food. And I actually often still take a nap. I just lie down on one of like the patient beds. And I set a timer and I just have a little lie down. Sometimes I really sleep, but I just have a lie. And the thing I've been doing more recently is I've been bringing my ukulele to work and then like playing and singing, not for others, so just for me, just like a time to be human in the middle of my day.
Yeah. A time to use your other side of the brain.
Yes. Because I don't know if you found, but like the afternoon slump can be rough. And you're like, why is everyone more annoying in the afternoon? Why am I struggling?
Joan, this was literally my day yesterday. And then the afternoon is more annoying. And then you have to go home and be your best self for your children.
Yes.
And like
you're so
somehow
snappy with your kids.
Erase away all the annoyance that you had.
No. Yes. And so what if we put space in so that wasn't the reality? Like it feels like it. No, because like you say, there's of course there's always more you can do. Even if you were doing 150%, there would be always more you could do. That is not the reason to do something, because there's always more you could do. You will never do even close to everything.
Okay, so I have a very selfish coaching question for you, me personally. Please. I feel like as the leader of our team here, we have a group of about 10 women. Some are full-time, some are part-time. But for some reason, I have in my brain that I have to be the first one here, the last one to leave. I have to see the most patients. I would feel a weird guilt about like taking a full hour of lunch and like lying down in the middle of the day. How do I get over that hump? In a sense, it's like a similar way of saying no, like we talked about earlier,
Yes.
but like, how do I still feel like I'm setting a good example for other team members at my office if I'm looking like I'm taking it easy?
Yeah. Well, a bit is sort of like really reflecting for yourself and your values about what is it that you do want to role model for your staff. And I think we have been really conditioned in like the all or nothing thinking that if we're not role modeling, give everything you have and be a hard worker and a good team player, and all of those are like capitalized and have a TM at the end, you know what I mean? Then we're going to have a bunch of lazy layabouts and it's going to be chaos. And that is, the marketing of hustle culture. It is a lie. Like, do you want your staff to be overworked and miserable?
No.
And I'm just going to say, if they're overworked, they're miserable. Like those two things, maybe not right. They're like, I'm a happy little worker bee for a while, but something's going to happen, right? So we know we don't want that. So then as a leader, what is it that, well, I'll ask you, like, what is it that you would want to emulate? Like, what work ethic feels good that you'd want to be a role model for them?
I mean, I think when I think about the forest view, when I think about them as like humans and team players, I do want them to be underworked, happy, fulfilled. I want to be challenged in ways that they want to be challenged. I want them to feel valued and listened to. But then on a tree level, on a more granular level, I'll be honest, some days when I'm walking around and they're all just chitty chatting and I feel like I'm the squirrel running in every direction, I'm like, man, what can I delegate to you guys? You guys don't have anything to do. But that goes back to, I think, to that toxic surgical culture, feeling like maximum efficiency is the only way to live. Somehow I need to erase that part of like my brain.
Yeah. And like, I believe that I don't think we'll ever wholly erase because like it's so deep in the culture. Like we need to move to a different planet or something. Like it's in us, in our nervous system. And like Pavlovian, right? Like that's response you had, like when you see someone else chilling and it's like, must be nice. Like, why aren't they doing, or you get mad at them, right? Like that's like a knee-jerk response that you can decondition over time. And the main thing is listening to that signal. Because when we are mad at or envious of or resentful of people because they are working less than us, that is our bodies telling us that we want them to be our role models. We're saying, I want that. I want less. And so it's a good signal to pay attention to.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was I'm a huge fan of Malcolm Gladwell and his books, and he gives all these great examples. The most memorable example for me is like decades ago, there was a shoe company called Steve Madden that had this like one marketing moment. Today we would call it viral, that plummeted that excelled the company from like this tiny little brand to this global empire. As a business owner, I am on this like hamster wheel of thinking like I'm just one step away from like blowing up, and like constantly feeling like if I'm not clinically seeing patients, I need to be marketing them. How do you coach physicians? Like, what is the difference between this spacious schedule and these delicious, delightful days, and still balancing that with growth and progress and like positive movement?
Yeah. It feels like it's like sharks. If they stop swimming, they die. Is that even true? But it's like a thing that people
That's
say,
what I
right?
learned in school.
Right. Same idea. Yeah, I think like it's offering alternative perspectives on that, because though that may have, I don't know the story of Steve Madden per se, but maybe the lore is like, and they all hustled every day, and then that shoe took them off, and now they're all bazillionaires, and we love those stories, and we pass those around, and they're not untrue. There you go, that happened. Like, but I love using like the analogies of nature, and look at all the different ways that in nature something can blossom and thrive, right? And so there probably are certain kinds of plants or animals where it's like they just hustle until they die, and then at some point the population explodes. Sure. If you look at your body, like the times that happens where it's like things keep ticking along, but then suddenly something very rapidly explodes. Most of the time, that's like disease that we're trying to take
Cancer.
out of their body. Yeah. I was like, now we've overwhelmed them to sepsis. Like, I understand, like, and listen, and I'm not like anti-business. I'm a businesswoman myself. I want to make an income. But I've gotten really curious with other ways to think of like sufficiency, enoughness, slow, sustainable growth. And that's probably never going to end up in the sexy business entrepreneur magazine or whatever. But like, look at how these things come in cycles and seasons. Like, think about farming, right? So like, yeah, there's times of hustle. So you're turning over the soil. Like everything I know from farming, I know from like Little House on the Prairie. So sorry, this is not modern farming, but like, you have times where you're working hard and you're getting up early and you're doing the most. And then there's like times where it's winter and there's nothing to do. And those times can feel excruciating because you're like, nothing's coming, but like the next spring comes and then you have your times again. Like this can include lots of times of being deliciously productive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just also having times where on purpose, you are productive, you are non-productive, and you are a human being instead of a human doing. Magic happens when you do that for yourself. The same.
Okay, so Joan, you have such a calm, grounded energy. What are some things we've talked about, your medical career, your entrepreneur and business aspects, but what are some of the things you do at home when you're alone or with your family that keep you grounded? And what are some things that you do with your creative space?
It is deeply thrilling to me to hear someone say that I have calm, grounding energy.
You do.
I have an old story that I'm like too much. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow. So I just love hearing that because it feels truer inside, especially these days. Because I'm at a baseline certainly have like underlying anxiety can do the most. Like everything I'm speaking of, I'm not like this wise sage that like woke up one day and like have always done it. Like I've learned by doing the opposite many times. So just saying. So some of the things I've learned that help keep me grounded and help me know that like holding space is worthwhile. Some very practical ones on the keeping grounded is to stop drinking caffeine. So I stopped drinking caffeine a few years ago. And that when your brain is like literally buzzing with less RPMs, that feels like, oh no, but my like productivity and efficiency, yeah, it's good. So like having your brain be able to just like let you know when you're actually tired. And then instead of overriding that, you like honor that. Seems very basic, is quite countercultural.
I love it.
But have a lie down. 10-minute lie down could be actually more restorative than another cup of coffee. So very basic, but very useful. Like I'd said before, like, yes, some of my things that bring me back to my body. I really love the whole world of embodiment, like, and practices that remind us that we're human beings and human bodies, like being in deep relationship with the only constant companion we have in this lifetime, which is this girl right here. I've been on like a journey, like I did some embodiment coaching with someone that I love so much that I actually have a second podcast about embodiment with her. And the way that her name is Jamie Lee Finch, the way she teaches it is like your body as a person, like consider yourself in relationship with your body, give her pronouns. So like I talk about my body as she, not it. And like I listen to what she enjoys doing and we make sure we spend time doing that. So the lying down, singing, playing the ukulele, which I specifically learned to play the ukulele so I could learn and sing as many Taylor Swift songs as possible, by the way. Very important fact about me. And sort of in that same vein, like following what I am, following pleasure, following what I enjoy. So like getting obsessed with Taylor Swift the past 2 years is like a very specific example. Dancing, like I used to view exercise as the good thing you do to stay healthy. I like thinking of it as movement now, and it still includes sometimes like lifting things, being like strength stuff, running stuff, but just as often I enjoy dancing as my form of movement every day. There's a specific YouTuber, the Fitness Marshal, who I feel like I am an evangelist of because I'm so obsessed with him. He does these like dance cardio videos that are so fun. And when I was coming back from my second mat leave during the pandemic, the only kind of movement I wanted to do was movement that felt good. And so I exclusively did Fitness Marshal videos. And So good. So yeah, things that connect me to my body is sort of a general theme, as well as time, therefore, like getting to know how my mind works and creating space from her. So journaling. I do a lot of voice memo, like either coaching with myself or just like I leave myself voice memos that I'll never listen to, like as I'm driving, but just to sort of verbally process. I find that very helpful because there's a lot that can build up in here. We need space and practices that just help settle that all down.
I can only imagine that your children are also learning to become more calm, grounded, compassionate humans, even if you don't like outwardly talk about it, but just by observing you. Would you say
I
that
hope
all of
so.
this has helped you become a more like connected, compassionate mom?
Yes. And I will say that in a way where like definitely my kids are like my greatest teachers of it. And like at like I was like postpartum anxiety girly, especially with the first one, obsessed with his naps, deeply dissociated from my body. So I still have a bit of a shame story about like how I was in those early years. Anyway, and if anyone's picturing me as like Cinderella with like my children sitting at my feet singing lullabies. Like, no, I have two extremely rambunctious boys that are like running around outside right now. They lose their crap. I lose my crap. Like all of that happens. And it was this embodiment parenting course actually where I first learned this idea of capacity of like the kindest thing that I've learned to do as a parent is like recognize when I am over capacity, which is when I yell. It's when I snap. It's when I do all the things that then later I feel like shame about, like that was bad parenting thing. And so now instead of judging myself, I like go to the bathroom. I'm like, Mama needs a break. And they're like, "Ah," and I'm like, no, I need a break. Here's a screen. Like the way that it works is I'm learning what my body needs to stay here. And then through that, yes, like I actually feel like I'm really enjoying parenting now. I'm actually have the space and bandwidth and less shame stories about what being a good parent means. And that means I can just simply like be with my kids and get to know them. And they're so funny. They're so ridiculous.
How old are
and
your boys?
Oh, they are 5 and 7.
Okay.
And they are loud and they have big feelings and they are brilliant and sassy and creative. And I do, especially because they're boys, I also have a lot of like fear about them becoming serial killers or gang members. I just
Okay, so I'm a mom of two boys, three and 6, and I have deep fears about them dying. Like,
that.
Just
yes.
all these horrific injuries. Like we were just at the lake and I was telling my husband, literally verbatim out of my mouth was like, kids drown every day in
the drowning
world.
fear is
and
real.
He's like, you are insane. Why are you need to relax. And I'm like, you've never worked in an ER before.
Yeah, we know too much. Like a medical mom, I totally honor anytime any of us go a little helicopter because we've seen it all, like no trampoline in my backyard, etc. You know? And so that's like where like that deep feeling work and knowing what's mine to like sit with. Like I remember my older one when he first got COVID, like it was a while into the pandemic. I want to say to virtue signal that we did a good job. Anyway, sorry, I just needed to. You know how there's like a virtual virtue signaling of how late you got COVID?
Yeah.
Just naming that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it came to us as it came to us all. And I had to reckon with a deep fear, even though by then it was like mild strain. It just was living so strongly in my body after all those months and all those years of like, keep it away, keep it away. And like, I had to just sit with that fear of like, yeah, you will feel so sad and so devastated if they die. And I will be here with you if you feel that. And that's not what's actually happening. But like doing that deep feeling work, I didn't know I was signing up for that with parenting, by the way, Lauren.
Neither did nobody does.
No.
Okay, I want to go back. You said you had a really like horrible postpartum time, like some really deep, dark moments. Are you okay sharing that?
Oh, yes. Because in part, I didn't think I knew how bad of a time I was having at the time, because it was sort of an extension of the time I'd been having up until then of just being riddled with anxiety about everything. But now I'm hyper focused and like, pumped full of hormones and very sleep deprived. And I got so obsessed with his naps. That was like the big one. And I read so many books, also breastfeeding, but then that started to go okay. But then the naps and the sleep training never went okay. In retrospect, because I think we just have too many ideas of what counts as good enough in that space. And there's so many experts with completely conflicting opinions about how to do it right and how much they need. Otherwise, they're going to end up brain dead or, like it's so fascinating. And so I just, it was a really intense time. It was useful to go through though, in terms of, it was a time then that I reached out for help, like therapy. It was a time of really like some beautiful moments of like support from my mom, who I otherwise have a very tricky relationship with because we have very different political and religious views, but like her being able to support me sort of physically, like taking the kid at that time was like useful. And my favorite thing about having gone through that time is like now when parents come and they have all the fears, I'm like, girl, I've been there. And my favorite thing to say to like my patients who are new parents is like, you're doing such a good job. Like no matter what, because they are, because they're kids alive, period. Let's lower the standards.
Yeah. No, I remember my very first pediatrician appointment with my first son. I went in and they said, you're doing a great job. And I just like burst into tears. I was like, thank you so much. I don't know what I'm doing.
No one knows. It's so hard.
I also, now that my friends have children, like usually for the kid's first birthday, I'll bring the mom a bottle of champagne. And I'm like, great job, mom.
You survived a whole year of
You
this.
kept them alive for a whole year. Yes. That's the hardest year to keep them alive.
It is such a hard year. And they breathe weird. And, the SIDS fears, like, sorry if this is triggering for anyone listening, but like the fears. And I was in these like physician mom groups on Facebook. And sometimes they're so helpful. And sometimes they're just a fear mob.
Yeah.
Of like
too much.
The car seat. Blah! And you're like, I didn't even know I was supposed to be worried about that. So that was actually another thing, was like logging off of those groups and instead connecting with other real moms and then having them say, oh no, this is what it's really like. That was another like core, not strategy, I didn't know, but like that was a core discovery that really helped the postpartum anxiety. Plus just more sleep.
Well, I'm going to say that it's not that I'm glad you were riddled with anxiety years ago, but hearing you talk about how you were years ago and then knowing you now, it's incredible how much progress you've made. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I think it's a good example for me to say, like, I can make big strides in the way I feel every day.
Yeah.
If you were to leave the other humans in the room with one piece of advice today, what would it be?
I think it would be just like notice in this moment that you're a human being in a human body, and just know that that body loves you so much. That's my favorite way to view everything that our bodies do for us. Like we learned how our bodies worked in medical school, and we never learned why they work because it's sort of a philosophical question. But like the whole point of our bodies are to keep us alive. And so I like to interpret that as being because they love us, because they are us, right? And so knowing that, what signals are your body giving to you? What are the nudges that your bodies are screaming that your body's doing for you? You don't even have to make a different decision because of it, but just know that that means that you are like surrounded and in the embodiment of love.
I love that. Dr. Joan Chan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. For those who are interested in listening to your podcast or interested in contacting you regarding the coaching, how can they find you?
Thank you for having me. This was so fun. I love being on other people's podcasts. I don't do it that much. I'm like, I have to do this more. But yes, I have my main podcast that's for physicians and other people in healthcare is called The Other Human in the Room. And that's part of the Hippocratic Collective. So you can find that all the places that podcasts are. You can find the YouTube version on the Hippocratic Collective channel. You can find my website, joanchanmd.com. That's where it has like my speaking stuff and my coaching course and all of that. And then my second podcast is called Experiential Anatomy. And that's the one I do with my embodiment coach. And that's just for anyone a human being in a human body. So if you like talking more about the embodiment part of things, that's where you can find that content.
This episode is brought to you by the Hippocratic Collective. Check out our shows and content at hippocratic-collective.com. Thanks for tuning into Fem MD, and remember, the world belongs to the women who question it.